Hello, and welcome to part 3 in our study of how science proves intelligent design. In our last study, in our last lesson, we were looking at the human body, parts of the human body. We specifically looked at the digestive system, the immune system, the muscular system, and the reproductive system. We want to continue on to look at a few more parts of the human body. Let's begin with number 10, the respiratory system. And again, we're looking at here, in case you've picked up in the middle, we're looking to see how all of these things are so intricately designed to perform a specific function. The respiratory system. One, the human respiratory system is a series of organs responsible for taking oxygen in and expelling carbon dioxide out. Most of this you're going to see, I'm just trying to make it plain and simple, but I'm going to read it so that I get it right. I've taken this right out of, science textbooks here. The primary components of the respiratory system are: 1, red blood cells. They collect the oxygen from the lungs and carry it to other parts of the body. They also collect the carbon dioxide and transport it back to the lungs, where it leaves the body when we exhale. Then you have the nose, which allows air to come into the body, and the mouth, which also allows air to come into the body. So we breathe, and oxygen enters through the nose or the mouth and passes into the sinuses. The sinuses are hollow spaces in the skull. Sinuses help regulate the temperature and humidity of the air that we breathe. Let me pause again, because as I'm going through this grocery list, I want to just keep reminding you, the goal is not to memorize all of these different components, but get a grasp of all the different things that are involved and how intricate they are, all with the mindset of saying, could this just have happened by chance, or are these evidence of intelligent design? So from the nose and the mouth, you go to the sinuses. From the sinuses, follow the path now, you go to the trachea, which is also called the windpipe. The trachea filters the air that is inhaled, and it branches into 2 tubes, which are called the bronchial tubes. The bronchial tubes are what carry the air into each lung. So you're bringing in the air through your nose and your mouth. It's going through your sinuses, which performs its job, and then it goes into the trachea or the windpipe, starts moving down, then it branches off into 2 tubes, because now it's got to get to your lungs, a lung on each side. So you got a tube taking it to each side, which is called the bronchial tubes. Next you have that are in there are inside the bronchial tubes, they are lined with tiny hairs. Understand this now. The bronchial tubes are lined with tiny hairs that are called cilia. The cilia are closely packed together to each other, and they move in a rhythmic pattern back and forth. The comparison that they gave was much like oars on a ship. You want to move the ship, the oars go in and they push this way. Then they come back and then they push this way, all to get the ship to move in a certain direction. That's exactly what the cilia is doing. It's moving in a direction in order to get things out of the body. We're going to see how it happens. A lot of things when we breathe, there's a lot of things around us. There's dust, there's pollen, there's all kinds of pollutants in the air. So a lot of things can get stuck in our airway. If it's not removed, these substances can cause damage and affect our breathing. The lining of the airway, of our airways, contains mucus. So you've got all the tubes, you got all the flowing, you got the sinuses, you got the trachea, you got the bronchial tubes going into your lung, you got the cilia hairs that are in there to filter things out, and now you have mucus. Mucus is a sticky substance that also, along with the cilia, traps dust, allergy-causing substances, bacterias, and viruses. We expel the mucus containing all of these things that need to come out of our body when we sneeze, when we cough, when we spit, or when we swallow. That's what that gets it out of the respiratory system. Now, the sweeping motion that we talked about of the cilia moves the mucus and whatever is trapped in it up towards your throat and the nasal cavity so it can be expelled. It's a filtration system. That's how we can breathe certain things and this and that and just get them out of our body because they're not supposed to be there. So cilia not only sweeps the mucus up and out, they act as filters that trap particles in the air that you inhale. Now listen, when the cilia do not function properly, a medical condition called bronchitis can develop. We all have heard of bronchitis. Bronchitis is the inflammation of the respiratory lining. Here's what happens. Mucus and debris accumulate, resulting in constriction of the airways. Breathing becomes difficult, phlegm accumulates, and coughing occurs. Heavy smokers have a hard time recovering from bronchitis because the chemicals in the cigarette smoke damage the cilia that line the airways. Eventually, the number of cilia is reduced, and those that remain may stop functioning altogether. And my point of bringing that up is, you see, there is a purpose. There is a distinct purpose to the cilia that is there, to all of these things that are there. It's not just hairs that grew. When something happens and you cause them not to work, the body starts to become sick. It doesn't function properly. If it gets bad enough, it dies. So you have all of these things, the nose, the mouth, everything that's coming in, the tubes that go down, all into the lungs, and this goes here, and the mucus is there, and this filters that, and that gets that out. All of it working together in unison so that we can breathe properly. Random chance? Or did someone design it? Intelligent design. Let's continue on with it. You go down through the bronchial tubes, they're going into the lungs. You have the lungs. We all know what the lungs do, but the lungs aren't just two big bags that are there, just two big empty sacs. You have the right lung, which has 3 lobes to it, the left lung, which has 2 lobes. These lobes are filled with small, spongy sacs. Again, like I said, it's not just a big balloon. There's specific design inside of them, small, spongy sacs that are called alveoli. This is where the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide takes place. The oxygen has to go in, so it gets into the blood, so it can go into all the body and give the body the oxygen that it needs. We all know that carbon dioxide, if it builds up too much, if we have too much of it, we die. So the body has to get rid of that used up oxygen. Of the impurities that come from the body is in the carbon dioxide that has to get out, and that's what the alveoli help to do and the lungs do. They get that carbon dioxide out. We inhale air and oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. The alveoli are the walls of the alveoli are extremely thin. They're about 0.2 micrometers. And the walls are composed of a single layer of tissue called epithelia cells, probably a word that you've heard of, and tiny blood vessels called the pulmonary capillaries. These are what all works together to get the oxygen in and to get the carbon dioxide out. Next, you have the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle at the bottom of the lungs. That's what controls our breathing. When a breath is taken in, listen what happens now. When a breath is taken, the diaphragm flattens out and pulls forward, making more space for the lungs. During exhalation, when we expel the air, it expands and forces the air out. Can you see the design here? Can you see the deliberate function? Random chance? All of this happening, all of this going through, everything that's coming with the air going in, into this, getting filtered, going to the sinuses, bronchial tubes, down into the lungs take this, with the alveoli in there. And see, it's not just, here's a tube, here's just one tube, it goes in your nose, and then it just comes out your mouth, and that's your whole respiratory system. There's monumental things going on in there. And again, I've scratched the surface. Can you not see? Can we not see order, design, purpose, deliberate, specific function, as opposed to random chance? Let's move on with the body, the urinary system. And again, look at all of these parts and see how they work together. See how one relies upon the other. See how they are all necessary to life. Again, we didn't mention that with the respiratory system, but naturally we know that you don't breathe, you die, you don't live. So now we go to the urinary system. The urinary system is the body's waste disposal. It's its waste disposal system. It's how it gets the waste out of the body. It filters waste and extra fluid from the bloodstream and removes them from the body. That's what the urinary system does. It filters waste and extra fluid from the bloodstream and removes it from the body. In order for normal urination to occur, all parts in the urinary tract need to work together and in the correct order. In order for this to take place, all the parts need to work together and they need to work in the correct order. Here's the parts of our urinary system. 1. Kidneys. Kidneys are 2 bean-shaped organs, each about the size of a fist. They're located just below the rib cage, one on each side of the spine. The kidneys remove urea from the blood through tiny filtering units called nephrons. Now, how does that get there? You see the intricacy? You see the technicality here? Third, when they combine the urea with water and other substances, it produces urine. That's where we get urine from. Every day, the kidneys, they filter about 120 to 150 quarts of blood. That's how many quarts are going through the kidneys and getting filtered in order to get these impurities out, to get the urea out, and to make urine. And they produce from 1 to 2 quarts of urine a day. The kidneys also prevent the buildup of wastes and extra fluid in the body. We all know that when our kidneys are not functioning properly, all that waste builds up, the body will die. If it's not cleaned out, if it's not taken care of, the body will die. The kidneys also keep the levels of electrolytes such as potassium and phosphate stable. I didn't even know we had them. Yet the kidneys are keeping it stable. They make hormones that help regulate blood pressure. They make red blood cells, which are necessary to stay alive. And they keep the bones strong. Secondly, as part of the urinary system is the ureters. Ureters are the thin tubes of muscles, one on each side of the bladder. They carry the urine from each of the kidneys to the bladder. Now, it seems like a small thing, but you talk about, the urine being in the bladder. Well, how does it get there? And how does it get out? Well, there's got to be tubes. How does the water get out of your sink? You don't just have the sink. You've got to have something to put that water in there, but then how does it get out? You have a drain under the sink. That's all part of design. You got a way to get it in, and you got a way to get it out. It's the same thing here. Now you got to have something to get this fluid out of the body, because it needs to be eliminated. That's the ureters. So they carry urine from each of the kidneys to the bladder. Here's what the bladder does. The bladder is located in the pelvis between the pelvic bones. It is a hollow, muscular, balloon-shaped organ that expands as it fills with urine. Although a person does not control kidney function, they can control when their bladder empties. So we can, through voluntary muscles, control when our bladder empties, but we don't control our kidneys functioning. That's an automatic function that takes place. Emptying of the bladder, we know, is called urination. Here's how that happens. Something you do multiple times every day and don't even think about. Think about it now. And see the order and see the design. The bladder stores urine until the person finds an appropriate time and place to urinate. A normal bladder acts like a reservoir and can hold 1.5 to 2 cups of urine. The muscles of the bladder wall remain relaxed while the bladder fills with urine. As the bladder fills to capacity, signals sent to the brain that tell the person to find a bathroom. And there's something we don't think about. When the bladder starts to get full and you know you're going to have to urinate, how do you know that? There's a signal sent from the bladder to the brain to tell you, hey, you better find a bathroom, pal, because it's getting time. How does that happen? We don't even think about it. Do you see the order? Do you see the design? Things going on that we don't even realize. But if it didn't happen, we'd be in big trouble. So, again, as the bladder fills the capacity, the signal is sent to the brain. During urination, this is what happened. The bladder empties through the urethra. That is located at the bottom of the bladder. So you've got the tubes that are taking liquid from the kidneys into the bladder, and now you have a tube at the bottom in order to get it out. It's not at the top, it's at the bottom. Again, just like a sink. You've got something to get, you've got the faucet that brings it into, you've got the sink, which is like the bladder that holds it, and then you've got the drain on the bottom. You ever seen a sink just evolve with all of those three parts to it? Same thing that's going on here. Listen to this now. There are three sets of muscles work together. You're going to urinate. Three sets of muscles that work together. The first set is the muscles is in the urethra itself. The second set of muscles is the internal sphincter. This muscle helps urine stay in the bladder. So you've got the first set of muscles that are in the urethra itself. The second set of muscles is called the sphincter muscle, the internal sphincter muscle. This helps urine stay in the bladder. This is when your bladder is starting to fill up with urine, you don't automatically urinate. There's a muscle there that keeps it inside. You know, when we're holding something so that we don't go to the bathroom, that's the muscle that's doing it. The third set of muscles is referred to as the external sphincter. Okay, now, here's urination. The brain signals the muscular bladder wall to tighten. We're now going to urinate. So the brain says to the muscle for the bladder, tighten. All right? This starts to squeeze urine out of the bladder. At the same time, the brain signals the sphincter muscle to relax. And as the sphincter muscles relax, urine exits the bladder through the urethra. So it's now time to, you get up in the middle of the night, you don't even think about it. But you're holding it in, if I can say that, when you have to go to the bathroom, you're holding it in until you get yourself to the toilet, and then you relax. If that's what you're thinking, your mind just goes, and you're able to urinate. Well, the one muscle is holding your bladder. So the one sphincter muscle is holding the bladder. Let me back this up. 3 steps. You've got the muscle in the bladder that's now starting to tighten. It says, hey, you need to go to the bathroom. Let's go. We got enough in here. It's time to empty this out. So before you get to where you can go to the bathroom, you've got the sphincter muscle is holding it. Okay, the bladder's saying, let's go. The sphincter muscle saying, not yet. Okay, then you get to the bathroom, and then you got the outer sphincter muscle. Your brain says, okay, relax. And the other one relaxes, and the other muscle squeezes, and out comes the urine. Something that we do, like I just said, how many times a day we don't even think about it, but look at the complexity of what's going on. Look at the muscles that have to exist, and look at the muscles that have to cooperate, and look at the signals that have to come from the body to the brain, and from the brain back to the bladder, I should say, and the kidneys. This, folks, is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And again, I'm skimming over the surface, but think about it. Did all of that happen? Did all of that happen just by chance? There's no design to it. And if there's no design, then there's no real purpose. But this just all came together all at the same time because they all have to function together. Randomly? Adaptation? What part of this process can you have and not have the other part if it's just adaptation and mutations over 1 million years? Let me tell you something. You have a human body without all of these parts right there for 2 weeks, a week, you're dead. Never mind a year, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 1 million years, 1 billion years. It's, I mean, you die. There's people that when they cannot empty the waste from their body because of cancer or whatever it might be, they die. These things need to all be there at the same time, and they need to function in an organized, systematic manner and perform their function at the right time. That is not intelligent design? Come on. Which takes more faith? Two more things let me do. Well, one more I'll hit just with it. This part of this system is the liver. And I'm just going to mention it and quickly what it does. The liver is also a filtering organ that is necessary for us to live. The liver detoxifies harmful chemicals. It breaks down drugs, like when we take different medications. It's the liver that breaks those all down. It filters the blood. It helps clean out the blood. Remember we had all the blood circulating through, and the blood is picking up waste in the body? Well, it's going through the liver, and the liver filters those impurities out and gets it out of the body. Without the liver, we die. People that can't get their liver and cleanse it right and this and that, they have to go and have dialysis and all of these kinds of things. Otherwise, they die. And the liver also, we talked about the blood before, produces blood clotting proteins. Just happens by random chance. The more and more and more we go, the more we see. Next one I was going to do is something we don't even think about. I'm just going to mention it quickly. Skin. Who thinks about skin? This is phenomenal, skin. I'm just mentioning it. Do a study on that and see whether you think that could have happened. Skin is actually an organ. It's the largest organ on the body. It protects the body, the internal organs and everything, all of our body, from the outside world. That's how all of these things don't get into the body. It's the first defense against bacteria, viruses, and other pathogens is the skin. We can get them sometimes by breathing them. We have filters there, but the skin is protecting that all the time. Skin helps regulate the body temperature. It also eliminates waste, perspiration. When we perspire, we're eliminating waste. That's why many times the perspiration is a foul odor to it. And that's also how it controls the body's temperature. When we start to sweat, the perspiration comes out, and as the perspiration evaporates, it has a cooling effect and cools you down. All of that happening through the skin. And we know that the skin expands, it contracts, allowing for movement and allowing for growth. We don't think about it sometimes, but if our fingers swell up or we put on a couple of pounds, our skin isn't breaking open. It's not a solid thing. It expands with us when we breathe. It expands when we move, when we stretch, when we do this, when we do that, when we tighten up. And so the things that go on, and I wish I had done more with this, but this is, when I started this series, I was going to do two. I was just going to break down two things, one of the things that I'm going to do last, and that was it. But the more I started studying, the more I looked at things, I added this and I added this, and now we're up to about 10 parts, I think, that there's going to be here, if I stay on track. But these things are phenomenal. But go and look at this and look at what in the world is happening here, even with the skin of our body. And again, you go back to the question. Random chance, no purpose, no design, no specific intent, or intelligent design, a creator. I think it's getting more and more clear which is the right answer. We're going to continue on with our study in our next lesson now. Until then, Lord bless you.